first I want to talk about your experience on the Wish bus,
Yeah.
107.5 FM. I know it's kind of the successor to NU 107.
Mm.
Um, this is actually the second time you played the Wish bus, right?
Yeah, for me, it's my second time. We were able to perform there in 2000. I think that was 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But it was with a different lineup back then. None of the guys who joined me on the bus back then were able to join me this time. I have like a totally different lineup. And back then, I played exclusively guitar. I didn't sing. And this time I had the new lineup that I've been playing with for the past year and a half. So yeah, that was my second time, and it's kind of a different setup now. Before we were able to play there, it's sort of like everybody with an original song were actually allowed to step on the bus. It's sort of like an open contest back then. So for now, it's sort of like a road show, some sort of a concert, a mobile concert. They chose their performers in advance. There were only like seven of us, and we were like the only band in Butuan City who were able to step on the bus and play.
Oh wow. So I mean, I know in my previous experience watching the Wish bus, I know it had some pretty big name acts that were especially popular in the
Yeah,
Philippines. Obviously, it had Bobby Belling from Woods, doing Nakalimutan ng Dios. It was,
man, I'm very
yeah,
impressed with your knowledge of the Filipino music. You're probably more knowledgeable than I am.
I don't know, but I know some kind of Philippine exclusive radio hits, or I guess again, like songs that were especially popular in the Philippines, like Steven
Oh,
Speaks performed Out of My League, and then
yes,
and then
yes,
the Moffats, who were big in Canada, also got
yeah.
very big in the Philippines with
They
I
were very
Miss You
big
Like
here in the
Crazy,
Philippines. Yeah,
that
yeah.
song. So
Because
it's
growing up in
good.
high school, going even in elementary school when I was like grade five or grade six. I don't know what level that is in the States, but yeah, back then, like that's like 20 years ago. The Moffats and Steven Speaks, they're inescapable. Everywhere you go, you hear their songs, and all of the girls in school, they know each member of the band like crazy.
Well, I mean, it's cool because you actually have 4 years on me. I was born in 91, and I know you were born in 87, so that's
87.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Our,
yeah, man.
our
So you were
experiences.
able to were the were was Steven Speaks actually big in the States?
No, not at all.
Oh,
Completely unknown. And the thing of it is, actually, what happened with Steven Speaks is sometime in 2003, a Filipino DJ actually discovered them on LimeWire, and I guess they were
oh,
uploading their music. And then through that sort of underground popularity, they were able to spread in the Philippines. And then through that, they got especially big in the Philippines. But also, there's this really, not to like sidetrack or anything, but there's
yeah,
this
go ahead.
really interesting phenomenon in the Philippines. Back then, there was the concept of the Philippine only radio hit. And it was like, so you would hear like songs like, Passenger Seat or
Oh,
Out of My League by Steven Speaks, but then you would also hear Inspector Mills by America and You by the Carpenters and As Long as It Matters by Jim Blossoms. Like, those weren't even like, those were kind
very
of like, yeah.
yeah. That's a very eclectic mix. It's actually very interesting. So you're saying actually back then in 2000, in early
Oh
2000s, you
yeah,
were
and
already
also
listening to Philippine
Deep
radio?
by Binocular was also a big one.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Sometimes
the
I
very
know.
the intro, the very haunting
Yeah.
intro. Ding, ding, ding.
So like Was that part of like your formative experience too? Like listening
Definitely,
to those
man.
songs growing up as well as like Pinoy rock?
Yeah, definitely, man. Those bands and those songs that you mentioned are, at this stage of my life, when somebody talks to me about my influences, I'm usually, everybody's expecting this to be a very hard, we're a hard rock band, and we're mostly grunge
Yeah,
influence.
yeah.
But those are the influences that I usually say. But if we're talking about the real ones, like the ones that really got me into music, those songs are truly they basically comprise the DNA of what I am, what I used to be probably when I speak of it now. But yeah, definitely. Binocular, Steven Speaks, the Moffats in my elementary years, and when I went to high school, like Simple Plan, Linkin Park, and of course Filipino music. But for me, actually, when I was a kid, I was not really into music. None of my parents, I don't have any member in my family who's into music. In fact, I have a grandmother who's a very strict school teacher who used to tell me, or my parents used to tell me that my grandmother used to beat them up every time
Shit.
she sees them. Every time she sees them playing a guitar or even hanging out with guys who play guitar, because my grandmother sees it as some sort of like them just not doing anything useful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a very old school Filipino Hispanic tradition. They see musicians as these lazy, as these bums who are just not really good for anything. But I remember, so I did not have any musical influ like an actual constant presence of somebody who's teaching me music. No, I did not have that, but I also remember when I was like 8 or 9, I used to join school contests, like going to competitions, like writing contests and whatever. And then every time I hear music, whatever kind of music, it usually made me miss home. So I usually, when I hear music back then, it reminded me of home, or at least in my neighborhood where people were playing music. So it kind of made me miss home, and I'd get homesick, and I usually would have to quit competition and go back home. And of course, I was such like, I was like, what do you call this here? A mama's boy.
Oh man.
every time, every time I hear music of whatever kind, I normally, you know, it normally made me want to go back home. So I hated music for that reason. When I was like 8 or 9, but in when I was 10, somehow I heard while I was hanging out at home, we had this old karaoke, no, old radio, just a little box, a little radio, whatever, and it played. I remember it played Butterfly. Which band was that? Come, my baby, come, come, you my
Oh yeah,
butterfly,
come my
sugar.
lady, come my lady.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh
And I got
god.
hooked into the groove, the beat, and the rapping. So that was my first musical experience where I actually said to myself, "Wow, this is actually enjoyable." And I started listening to that radio, and all the hip hop hits back then, and of course Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit.
Hmm.
Yeah. So at this point in my life, when I talk to when somebody mentions those bands, you know, I mean, most of the people that I hang out with will probably tell me that those are Baduy. Do you know that word?
Yeah,
It's a Filipino word
Badoy.
for uncool, right?
Uncool.
Yeah.
I don't know
So
what you
yeah.
think of these, but I mean, here's Wolfgang, and here
Oh
is
man,
Color It Red, 2-in-1. Their first two
you
albums.
you
That's
have
what I have.
those.
That's at the
Actually,
top of my
I
rack.
got into Wolfgang a little late. Actually, it wasn't. They're not really that popular where I'm from, here in Mindanao. But because I was mainly listening to vanilla radio, whatever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mainstream songs, and Wolfgang by that time was no longer that popular in the Philippines. But as I got into college, I had friends who listened to metal, And of course, I got introduced to Basta and
Yeah,
company.
he's one roll another
Correct.
yeah. Let a caress blonde man.
So yeah, like I was saying, those bands
Yeah.
that I mentioned, there's actually, I must really confess, there's still a guilty pleasure of mine. Every once in a while, when I drive my car, I usually listen to those songs. I have this special folder for high school hits, and you'd find, again, Link Park, Eminem. I got into. Did you know that
Yeah.
I got into Eminem so much in high school that I even dyed my hair uh, blonde
With
one
the
time.
frosted tips and everything.
Yeah, and
Oh
everything. But
god damn.
I actually thought that I looked cool in that, but when I look back at those pictures now, jeez,
Um
what was I
but
thinking?
tying all of that together, like in your formative years, I mean, a special thing happened in a festival that you're like the main proprietor of, it seems, SIMFest, and that has to do with you actually playing with Ernie Gancio of Yano.
Yeah,
Like
correct,
you
correct.
said, that happened at the
Crazy.
very last minute, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's the result of the us. We made a mistake actually of
Oh wow, so
because
it's fate almost, like
yeah, it's
or it
fate.
seemed like.
I did not intend for that to happen. Actually, Eric of Yano was had already played by then. He had already completed a set, like an hour, like about an hour. He had like this 12 song or 13 song set, and he had just completed that, but it was still waiting for me because I still had not given him his fees for that event, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
for that he was asking for quite a substantial amount, so I only paid him like a down payment, and he was waiting for me to. And he was hanging out a bit in the back. He was drinking beer, and I was waiting for the organizers, my other organizers, to come up with the cash. We already had it, but we were still counting it. It's
Yeah.
actually the first time they were charging fees for SimFest. The previous events we were not charging fees, but for this one we had to charge because of Yano, because they were asking for
Yeah,
the
big
fees.
name
So
acts, you know.
yeah, they're big name acts. So as he was waiting in the back, actually by the side of the stage, he had his own tent. Then he was drinking with a couple of his bandmates,
Right.
and I came up to him, I gave him money, and then Siguro, probably because he was, he actually promised me a set, an hour and a half set, an hour and a half, like 20 songs. But he was only able to play like an hour, so probably felt like he needed to at least entertain some of my questions. Guy, I had so many questions that I wanted to ask him, so
Oh
we
man.
talked for like so many, because they're basically for me they're my favorite Filipino band, and I had only known actually like several years after they disbanded that they were actually no longer together with he's no longer together with Dong Abay, the singer.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Good
I
old
spoke
dong.
with him. He told me a lot of things. I learned a lot. And then at the end of a conversation, as the last band was playing at 2 a.m. probably or 2:30, I asked him, "Hey, you want to jam?" Because he told me that he played drums,
Oh
and I asked
wow.
him, "Oh, why don't you play drums?" And I played a
Because
song
he's
with you.
normally a guitarist, right?
Yeah, yeah, he's a guitar player and a singer. So I think it's actually the first time that anyone's ever seen him on film. I mean, on camera, play drums. So
Wow.
it was amazing. It felt surreal at that point. I was already half drunk. He probably was a little buzzed. So
Probably
yeah,
still
so
getting over.
yeah, so that's probably one of the reasons why he readily agreed when I asked him, "Hey, Dong, I mean, hey Eric, what do we play Bananaso, their biggest hit? Since let's just jam for a bit before you go, and one for the road." And he played, and it was amazing. I actually fucked up many times during the song. I just That's why I edited
Oh
the
man.
video. Yeah, yeah, because I felt so nervous playing in front of the guy. So
But it was still
yeah.
cool, you know. It still is a good thing. It's kind of like a full circle moment for you.
Yeah, like I don't know if I've already posted this, but back in when I was in college in 2004 to 2008, the only Filipino band that I consistently listened to was actually Yano,
Oh
his
wow.
band. So And I've always commented to myself because back then I did not have any internet connection. I could only go to the internet when I go to these
The
internet
cafes or
shops,
something?
the cafes. Yeah, the cafes. But I was poor as heck back then, so I only had money to for transportation and food. So what I did, I could only go to these internet shops ever so rarely, like once a week,
Yeah.
and like I could only spend like a couple of hours there. So I was not able to actually do my research on Yano or what was happening to the band back then. So all this time that I was listening to them in college, I was thinking that they were still together, and I often told my friends that they're the best Filipino band ever. I've always been consistent with that. I've always been a big fan, and even several years later, somehow I still, even when I had internet access, somehow I did not know still that they were already disbanded. In 2015, I even posted on Facebook that the greatest guitar solo in the history of Filipino music is the guitar solo for Banal na Aso.
Banana
Uh,
house, yeah, I figured.
yeah, yeah, that's the acoustic. I spoke with
It is a good one.
Eric.
Like I've
Yeah,
listened to it over and over since I was like 15.
oh, yeah, right. It fits the song, and it's so for me it's so divine and ethereal. Uh, so that's one of the first things that I actually asked him, and he said that he recorded that guitar solo in a span of a day, I think, during recording sessions, and he did it like in only 2 or 3 takes.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh, that actually amazed me, and I commended him on the solo. I told him that it's my favorite, and he said that it was the first time that he that somebody told him about how much they appreciate that solo. Because most of the time, the people here, when you speak of Banal na Aso, normally what people normally associate with that is the vocal line, right?
Kako sadyang ang isang ari na
That's crazy, man.
tayo.
You know the words.
Yeah, yeah, kind of.
God damn.
But leading into that, what kind of bands did you join in your formative years, and how does Ballsbreakers kind of like serve as like a successor to that?
Yeah, in high school we actually had this band with my classmates or my with most of my classmates. But back then we did not have any instruments. We did not have any studio. Uh, the only reason we were able to play back then is because a couple of my classmates were members of churches and
Oh yeah.
evangelical churches, and most
So
of the
they
churches at
had
that
like
time.
those setups already.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. So I did not have any instrument at all, and back then I could not play guitar. I did not have any plans of learning how to play guitar because what I did mostly was just rap, because I was like in my Eminem years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I transitioned to Linkin Park, so still rap. So I was the guy who was imitating Mike Shinoda back then.
Yeah.
We had this guy who knows how to scream, and I knew how to rap. So I was part of the band, and I was sort of like the group leader because I was usually the most the one who tended to be more domineering back then because I was quite the asshole back then in high school.
Oh
So
man.
yeah. So
Um,
we formed a band with a couple of my friends who were in religious bands.
right.
So uh, in order for us to be able to play, it's funny actually when I think about it now. In order for us to be able to play, sometimes I had to attend, masses or sermons
Right,
in their
right.
churches,
Yeah.
even though I really don't belong to the church. So we had to like, wait for the masses to finish, and then after when everybody's gone, we kind of like, use the instruments after the actual players they have left. So they had like this, they had the drum set, they had amplifiers, they had guitars. So yeah, without, it's funny because I tend to say nowadays that I wasn't really religious or whatever. I'm not really religious right now, but I
Yeah.
do have faith. My wife is very, into church.
Yeah.
She's sleeping presently. But yeah, it's funny because without those churches and those religious events, there wouldn't be. I probably would not be in the position that I am now, interested in music. So yeah, so there came a time that was high school, and we had like gigs, and most probably all of them were always disastrous because we were thinking that we were good, but the skill definitely wasn't there.
Yeah.
So we had all the confidence in the world. Perhaps the balls aspect of the band was
Yeah.
still was
Ballsbreakers.
present back then. So we joined a couple of battle of the bands because that was pretty common back
Hmm.
then. So we did not win, obviously, and in fact, I don't even like to think about it now.
Did it like still your confidence, or were you inspired to keep playing and keep pushing?
uh, it definitely destroyed whatever confidence I had when a couple of people after the
Oh, all
event
right. So it took a while
told
to
me, I
get
said,
back.
yeah, but after then we formed the band like uh I was like second year high school, so I was like 13 or 14. But when I don't know, 15 or 16, but after that I graduated high school. So the thing there is we kind of went our separate ways with the rest of the
Right.
band because I went to Cebu, that's a different island entirely, to attend university, and all of my bandmates basically stayed here in Mindanao. So yeah, I went. We went our separate ways, and we couldn't really jam anymore. And in Cebu, I was kind of like the new guy, and I did not know anyone. And
Right.
basically, what happened was I stopped being in a band for like uh, what was that? For like 18 years probably.
Oh,
But
so the Ballsbreakers kind of reinvigorated that.
yeah, yes, because back then we did not really identify ourselves as we did not even, I don't even recall us having a name back then. So we
Oh,
just like
right.
kind of like this group, whatever. But back, yeah. But the thing is, even though that experience was put to a stop, or
Yeah.
I did not have any band anymore. But that experience basically instilled in me a love for music that never really faded one bit after that. So when I went to Cebu, all I did is if I had extra money, I'd buy CDs, pirated CDs only, because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all that I could afford. There's this sidewalk vendor in Cebu who sells CDs, and I'd buy. I got introduced to the Seattle sound because I was
Yeah.
reading this. I don't know if you know this. In the Philippines, we have this little booklets that we call song hits.
Song hits.
Uh,
Yeah, I've seen
you
a
know what a
couple
song
of
hits
those on
is?
eBay.
That was the only way back then that you could learn. You could check out tabs. You could check out the chords for the songs,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you could have like updates on whatever was happening with your favorite bands. And because back then there was internet, but it was only available to those in the cities. For us in the provinces, what we had was just those song hits. Yeah, I even remember talking about song hits now. I remember uh uh because in Agusan del Sur, where I am staying,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's only like one place in the entire province which sells song hits, and the only way for us to, like I said, to get an update as to what was happening with our favorite bands, and
Mhm.
to know the exact chords to the songs that we were trying to learn, is to get these song hits. So I remember there's only one place called San Francisco.
Oh,
Funny,
wow.
San Francisco. Yeah, it's a city, or sort of like a town city here in Agusan del Sur. That was the only place. There was a bus terminal there. They had a stall that sells exclusively song hits. And every time somebody goes to San Francisco, we'd get all excited with contribute money, whatever money we had for him or that guy to buy us the song hits.
Yeah.
And every time he gets back home and he arrives, he wave the song hits that
Yeah.
he that
So,
he bought.
so all of that was like kind of instrumental, pun intended, and you
Mm,
just keeping your spirits alive
correct,
and
correct, correct.
eventually getting Balls Breakers underway. Now, your debut with the Balls Breakers was like a kitchen recorded, as I understand, a kind of
C-
lo-fi effort.
Yeah,
Songs for
correct.
Fredo. How did that
Yeah.
come about?
Yeah, so like I said, 18 years passed since the band kind of broke up. So
Hmm.
I went back home. I was focused on work. We'd get together from time to time, but we did not. Again, I was penniless, so I
Yeah.
still did not have like a steady job. So I could not afford any, band instrument, whatever. So we'd get together, we'd jam, just an acoustic guitar and a couple of beers. And then
Mhm.
sometime, like several years after that, I already had this steady job. So I
Mhm.
bought an electric guitar. Then a couple of months after, I bought an amplifier. I don't know, I mean, and another acoustic guitar, then a bass. But somehow, as the idea came to me, funny enough, to form a band after I recognized that I only needed like a full drum set to have like a full band with
Right.
me. So when I had the guys, I asked them, uh, actually like two or three guys from my high school band because they're still good friends of mine. I asked
Okay.
them to stop by. We jammed at home when I finally bought the drum set. We jammed and we realized that somehow we could probably do this from time to time. So like I asked them again to come by the next weekend. We had this cover songs that we wanted to play for just for ourselves at home or getting together. And then after that, somehow, because I already had songs of my own that I wrote in Cebu, because I started learning guitar in 2010, I think. Then I
Oh,
had
okay.
these
Cool.
demos, so I introduced these songs to them, and I told them, if it's possible, maybe we can, have this on a full band setup. And they liked it, and yeah, more or less. After that, I decided to do it like for real. So I we had this little garage or actually an unused room beside the kitchen, just right beside the kitchen, which was large enough to house uh, the band or the instruments. So I set up there in the kitchen, right beside the kitchen. And after that, we continuously practiced, had a couple of gigs locally, then decided to record on our own with little to basically zero experience home recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, back when I reviewed Songs for Fredo, I included it in my top 10 for a reason
Yeah, man. Thanks
because
for that, man.
it was like a different experience to me. It was making the most of space in a lo-fi setting, and that's what I appreciated. And I feel a similar kind of
Thank you.
resonance when it comes to your new album, which I guess you can transition into. Life in the Tundra is the follow up after Songs for Fredo, the one that you're promoting now. And I feel there was, even within that, um, kind of experimental, kind of making the use of like the space around you, you still kind of employ similar tactics that still make it work, you know? Like you have like this middle part in Life of the Tundra that kind of spreads out, but then it get kind of comes back together again. And
Yeah, yeah.
I was just thinking when it comes to Life in the Tundra, what did you take away from Songs for Fredo and kind of apply to this? Or in contrast, was this a completely new slate?
In some ways, it's actually like you said, a completely new slate. Considering that I'm recording the second album with an entirely new group, and the most obvious one is that the old singer for Songs for Fredo, Jeff, is and was and is no longer with the band. So we kind of like had to restart basically with me as a singer because I don't really identify myself as a singer, and I do sing. At that time when we were recording our first album, I did have a single track where I was just basically ranting, right? Like I was just spoken word. So
Yeah, yeah.
the idea of me singing is not really wasn't really planned. it was a necessity basically because Jeff's departure was kind of abrupt. We were actually speaking about or talking about recording a new album. Somehow, a couple of months after we spoke, he told me out of the blue that he's leaving the band. So I already had these songs lined up. I already had plans, but since he left, I kind of like I was basically forced to look for a singer. But then I thought that if I looked for another singer, uh, it might he might not be that the chemistry might not be there. If I introduce another new member or another new element to the
Yeah.
band, it might not be as good as Jeff. So just for continuity, just for the sake of continuity, what I did basically was volunteer myself as a singer,
Okay.
and we tried our first track where I sang was basically as a light drifting, which was a
Hmm.
single we released in early 2020.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, you're right. In some ways, this was basically a clean slate for us, a restart, basically. Because back at that time, the drummer was also already left for some reason. I already had a new bassist. So basically, at the start of the recording for the second album, I had a whole new group with me. So
Hmm.
I kind of like it was restart. But then the approach to songwriting remained the same because I was the one who wrote all of the songs in the first album. So the ethos or the approach to recording is still the same. Like, I do not write songs that take a week or probably more than a week. My principle has always been if it doesn't sound good to me now, it will never be good. So when I write songs, I the songs that you find in the record that have been recorded are all songs. Basically, how they are constructed, how the whole song is built up, is basically how that song was written when I first actually wrote them.
Oh,
So
wow. So it didn't really go through too many revisions, right?
it doesn't because sometimes there's like 3 or 4 songs in the new album which kind of like we kind of like to had have to restructure because we had like at that time a new drummer who's a very technical drummer and he had his own ideas how to do it. And of course, I'm not a technical guy, so we had to like adjust to his ideas. But then mostly, yeah, you're right. So songs for Fredo, all the songs there basically are written by me. Like top, like the longest that it took me to write the songs there is probably 1 hour. So most of
Oh,
them are
wow.
written in a few minutes. Yeah, I just usually
So,
just sit
so in
down.
comparison to this one, do you feel like Life in the Tundra, your new album, is more of a band cohesive effort, more collaborative?
Uh, I don't really know, but I've always been receptive to the guys when they have ideas. I mean, I'm not the Tom York kind of guy, which basically,
Yeah.
controls everyone. I'm not that kind of guy. In fact, what I usually do when I introduce a song is ask them, "So, what do you think? Is it good enough? Do we record?" Yeah, but yeah, I guess it's just a product of the guys not being used to songwriting. Most of them have never been in a band that have written songs of their own, so they kind of like just allows me to they kind of like allow me to continue, you know, orchestrating whatever it is that I want. And then from time to time, they have ideas as to how to execute the instruments in the song. Because in the aspect of writing, they basically, I mean, I'm the only guy who's been writing songs before that. And even after that, I continue to encourage them. If you have songs of your own, you can share it with me and we can actually record it together, but they've never really done that. But yeah, it's a collaborative effort still. I would still say that because I'm the worst musician in the group. The big,
God
yeah,
damn.
yeah, I do acknowledge that. So they're better than me, and even our drummer now, Jonas, is even better than I am at guitar.
Right. Right.
So when it comes to recording, when I always ask them as some sort of a, I always ask them to review. What do you
Right.
think? What do you think about these? How the guitar was recorded, or what do you think
Yeah.
about the tone? What do you think about my solo in there? Is it somehow uh, acceptable. I always let them have the final word. Even in the second album. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that it's not collaborative, but definitely considering that in the second album we had for most of the recording, like I said, Andrew, who was a very technical guy. He's been in bands like for 20 years, and he's a very,
Oh, wow.
you know, yeah, he's a very technical drummer. He is not he's not spontaneous. He's not really creative, but he is a very technical dude. Like, he when he
In the
plays
same way, you
live,
can still learn a lot from him by what he
yeah,
does.
correct.
That's good.
So yeah, that was definitely one of the reasons why during the second album when we were recording, I usually let them, review the songs before we master it, before we consider it done. I usually have them review how the instruments were recorded. So
How do you feel about how Life in the Tundra was produced and getting that going? Bimboy was instrumental in the production, wasn't he?
yeah, yeah, Beamboy is instrumental in more ways than one. He recorded all of the bass parts. He uh, he continuously he's like basically he's always been with me. Actually, if you think about when we started recording the album, he's the only guy that's been from the very beginning to the end. So when I usually asked him to record, he's usually there. So yeah, big up to Beam Boy.
It's good, man. And
Yeah.
considering your many lineup changes, do you feel like this one will stick around for a while?
Yeah, that's the thing though. Considering the lineup changes,
Yeah,
I've learned the very hard lesson. Like, this is a tough gig for, especially for guys like us who have regular jobs. So we're not really, as you know, we're not really doing this professionally. We're not being hired to play at clubs or gigs or whatever. We do play many gigs, but it's actually us promoting our music. So we're not really doing this as a livelihood, basically. So I've learned that in the beginning, I had this romantic notion of a band always being together, like this solid group
yeah,
of brothers who won't leave each other. But as time went on, like in a span of 4 years, I've had like 8 drummers and many different guitar players. So I've learned the lesson that it's a tough gig for anyone. So yeah, I've accepted the fact that these guys might not stick around for as much as I will, because I intend to do this like as long as I can.
yeah,
Beamboy will
yeah.
probably be there because he's as passionate as I am, but the rest of the guys, I'm open to them leaving, and I won't be changing the band name anytime soon because they know their arrangement with me.
Yeah.
When they join the band, they basically know that yeah, if you leave, yeah, I look for another one.
Well, it's good, man. It's good that you have the lineup that you have now. You're having a lot of success, as far as I can see. And as far as like an all-encompassing wrap-up question, what have you learned about yourself, both as a musician and as a person, considering the career that you have thus far?
Yeah, this year especially, I learned a lot about myself. This year has been the most busy we've ever been. Uh, we went to Cebu, we went to many different places, and we played many gigs this year, the most we've ever played. And like you said, we went to Wish Bus, and I played with Ernie Gancio. Yeah, I learned that I still have much to learn musically. Like I still need to, like, having interacted with a lot of musicians and having seen Jack White live, by the way, in November. Uh, yeah, I still have a lot to go when it comes to playing. When it comes to my playing, yeah, because I'm not really consistent when it comes to practicing. I can only practice on weekends mostly because of the job that I have. And as a person, I do. Yeah, I learned that I still have a lot of work to do when it comes to still dealing with. I do have this tendency if I announce to the guys like you, yo, we have a gig this coming so and so, and they say, I'm not available in that day. All right, I look for another guy. Yeah, I won't accuse the guys of. I won't. fault them if they accuse me of being disloyal sometimes, because sometimes I get driven so much by the desire to play that I sometimes forget that these guys also have their own, lives,
Mhm.
and they do need to take a break from time to time.
Um,
Yeah, I did learn that I've been kind of demanding. Yeah, chalk it up to me being too passionate about this thing.
well, the most important thing is you love the guys that you're with. You're in constant communication, and you have a great rapport going with,
Yeah,
the scene
yeah,
that
right,
you're involved with.
correct,
That's what
definitely.
matters, man.
Yeah, definitely. I do not have any enemies actually when it comes to music. I always promote what the other guys are doing. All the other bands that I've been with or encountered, I've always been a big supporter. And yeah, it's the Balls Breakers basically have become like the Blues Breakers. Funny enough, uh, where John Mayall was constantly. Yeah, there's this constant line of changes. It just depends on the who's available. We're in it for the music. We're not in it for the fame or whatever. This is not a thing that anybody owns for me. For me, I don't really own this. Nobody owns this. So we're just here to purvey, to communicate our art. So whoever is able to do that, I always entertain. I'll always accept in the band. Yeah.
Mhm. And then lastly, anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Yeah, like to the 10 or 12 followers or fans we have. Yeah, we thank you for continuing to support our music. Despite the yeah, if you had like your favorite members, if they're no longer in the group, yeah, I apologize for what for the lineup changes. But the music, as I said, that's always a thing that we're trying to edify or just trying to champion. So thank you for continuing to listen and subscribe to and follow whatever it is that we've been doing. Especially this second album. In the coming months, we will be launching. I mean, we will be embarking on a tour, so we'll probably be in a place near you to most of those followers. So we'd appreciate if you could come by and come by and listen to us and join us in the gigs. So I want to thank, of course, my wife, who's always been very supportive of whatever it is I've been doing. Uh, and to my bandmates, thank you for continuing to uh, make my vision, come to life.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much.